Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Traumatology. I'm joined here with Dr. Miller. Hi, Dr. Miller.
Good morning, Rebecca.
Today, we'll be talking about Dr. Miller's PsyD research that you're defending at the end of the week.
Yes, I am. Yes.
So this is for research around the theme of trauma still, so it's consistent with the Traumatology series. But this is really looking more into resilience and growth and looking at the power of self-determination within the healing context of trauma. Can you explain to our listeners what does self-determination mean?
Mm-hmm. You know, the term itself is really looking at, as a person, when I self-determine, I assert my personhood, my rights, right, to be valued, to find a way through something, to know I'm of worth, and that I get a choice in that. Because, you know, in a general sense, in all traumatic experience, a person doesn't get the right to be safe, to be valued, right, to have control. So if you think about healing, and a lot of healing practices might be given to a person, like it's like here, research has told us this. And of course, good research tells us good things because it tells us, you know, what has been done that's helped people get through experiences and allows them to feel psychologically better, or they've got some strategies now they can use. But sometimes in that, there's like a missing piece. And if a person didn't get a choice and maybe they didn't want to do CBT or they didn't want to, you know, go through some medical process, is that not taking away from their right to define their own healing? And I've been pondering this one, it seems, for a lot of my career, because looking at how when people get to choose, there seems to be some sort of a better capacity, like a self-efficacy. Efficacy means I somehow decide that there's a vitality, a resiliency that comes with that. So one of the things I wanted to explore was gathering stories, doing a qualitative approach, kind of looking at stories of people that have come through something traumatic and moving into what helped them, right? What did they determine that would be beneficial to them in their healing? And if the choice itself, the act of self-determining, was an important part of their healing. And so self-determination is somehow in your experience that you do get to choose a choice to enter into a helping relationship, to use some sort of therapeutic response, to buy, you know, a pet, or to bring a therapy animal into your life, like something, you determine it. And in the act of determining, I take back some power, I take back some worth. I know myself in a different way. So that's sort of where self-determination, you know, the definition itself is to self-determine, that it comes from me versus the other determined, it comes from you, or the medical model, or the psychological research. That I might listen to that, I might listen to someone talk about that and bring that to me, but at the end of the day, I self-determine whether or not that is something I need, I want, that would benefit my personhood, in my efficacy to redefine my life, to explore healing, that it comes more from me.
So self-determination really almost takes the model out of the care and gives the choice back to the individual.
Yes, yes.
Just hearing you speak about it reminds me of just trauma-informed care. It seems like self-determination is kind of like the pinnacle of trauma-informed care because it really embodies empowerment. It embodies choice, collaboration, all of those aspects that we know are in a framework of trauma-informed care, and it gives power back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does. And so it comes from the person versus I give power to them, because then it's more, it again disempowers them. If I give power to them, if I say this is what research has told us that you need so you can be healthier in your healing around this traumatic impact, it's coming from me, right? There's a power dynamic in that versus research has said, so I'm going to share with you all of the information, and then we're going to create space, and I want you to determine, and I'll help you think that through, and then you get to choose. And I'm encouraging choice, because when you leave this room, when you go forward into your life, you will know what it's like to have chosen. Because traumatic experiences don't give you choice. They take from your right to be safe, right? To have experiences that are validating. Self-determination builds back in choice. a sense of knowing that this is your right, that you have this capacity, and you take that back into your world.
So really emphasizing the sense of agency and control in someone's healing process. Right.
Yes.
So this sounds like a really important goal for a lot of the therapeutic work for people going through a traumatic experience and recovering from that. However, it sounds like a very difficult stage to get to, being able to embody that self-determination if that hasn't been a mindset that you've practiced for a long time. So what are some ways that individuals can nurture and really cultivate a self-determination way of healing and living?
Well, sometimes it will come through almost like a co-regulation model where they're around a good friend that encourages them to get help. It may come from education or information, really good information that they never thought that, they could actually go and ask for that. And they think, why didn't I think about that? Or, maybe now that I know, I want to ask for that. No one's ever offered it to me. So a lot of times you may see like a co-relational component to it, and that's trauma-focused care, or that's more of a trauma-focused response, that we create opportunity for those that have been impacted to know what are some of the options, what are some of the resources, what's some of the education, so that they can enter into it, right, with a sense of more knowledge and then more support and encouragement to think about, would that be something that would work for them? And you'll see that even communities do this. I look at the Indigenous community and how they're rebuilding, how they provide education for their own and reclaiming language and all of that. That's all around self-determination as a collective unit. And they're now determining the importance to hold on to their language and to bring it back to the young. Like, just to rebuild that is so powerful. And that is part of self-determining.
I think a common theme in a lot of our episodes and the work that we've been talking about here is the importance of a system and of a support network.
Yeah, definitely. And that means when people are doing their work or creating services, it's not just this is what the research says. It's this is what the research says, and how do we begin to connect to those that are not as visible, those that have been impacted, and then how do we create spaces so that they ultimately get to determine things they need, and are we willing to listen to that? Are we creating, these shared powered relationships, or is it expert knows best? And really the one expert on their own, healing is the person seeking the healing, right?
Right, they know their own story best.
Yes, they do.
With that being said, a lot of the time people will turn to experts or professionals for that support that they may not be able to look within their community to get. With self-determination in mind within the healing journey, how does that, using self-determination as a framework or almost like a goal for the individual, how does that intersect with the therapeutic approaches and interventions that you're using clinically as well?
Well, I think it comes back to one, creating safe spaces and creating safe conversations. Because are you showing up with intentionality in the conversations, not to be the expert knows best, but to allow that person to be the expert of their story and to bring a story and to receive it with meaning, right? And to value and honor before you go into, these are the approaches that work best, is to know that person and their story. Right? Because within that interaction, that relational piece, where you give that safe space, they may not need you as you had proposed they would, right? Because if healing is in the act of being known and being understood, sometimes that is all that really is needed for people.
Sometimes it's as simple as just walking alongside someone in their story and their experience and creating that space.
Because within that, they begin to realize, right, that they have the right to be respected. They have the right to be known, and they take that forward into their life. Because I always say 1 hour in therapy, 23 at home. The most important piece is the experience they have in that 1 hour, and they might take a few things away, but then they have to know that they, right, have the power to self-determine what they do with that, how they can go back into their relationships and ask for more respect, or put in boundaries, or find new relationships, or take care of themselves in a better way. And they may come back in for other things that are going to help them. But if they didn't leave knowing that they mattered, that their story mattered, then the rest isn't going to matter.
Right. I think what it sounds like to me, what you're describing is in that therapeutic setting, what you're doing is really modeling the respect that they deserve, and in a way that maybe they haven't seen before, and to know that their stories matter and that they matter, so that they can really go out into the world and repeat that modeled behavior.
Because what you give them in that, relational interaction can either contribute to their well-being or take away from it. And if it takes away from it, it's the same sort of experience that they've potentially gone through in other traumatic experiences. And one of the things my research is showing is that for many people, it wasn't just therapy. There were other things they needed to self-determine, like their own self-care, when they began to realize that it mattered to get up in the morning, to start taking care of themselves, to eat in a different way so they can actually show themselves, or, allow themselves to be healthier in their body, to realize that some of the relationships they had were not as beneficial as they had thought. Maybe they were just filling time and space, but they had learned, right, through their own self-determination that they had a right to be respected. So they chose other relationships, or they recovered relationships that they had left because they didn't know how to bring their story to people that cared about them. So now they felt their worth through this process of learning about, healing and what they needed and choosing it. They chose to go back into relationships and heal them.
So they're enacting that sense of autonomy, not only within the therapy room and in choosing what is their healing and recovering journey, but also outside of that in their own lives, practicing practical ways that's promoting their ability to feel empowered and to feel in control, and maybe in control is the wrong word, but to take back a little bit and have choice in their lives.
And to have choice is it is about having some control, but in a way not to harm someone else, but to benefit, right, your own self. Because we are beings of control. When we're in situations, there's certain things that we need to know that we can handle and manage or get for ourselves. That's not all bad. It's when it comes at the expense of others, and or we do it in a way that might benefit ourselves. And so when you're self-determining and you know that this becomes something that I want or I need in order to heal, to bring myself through something that's impacted me, to have healthier relationships, to go back to school because I know that I matter and that this is something that would be worthwhile for me, even though I believed that I didn't have a right or I wasn't smart enough because someone had told me my whole life I wasn't. But now I believe, I know I have that inherent worth, and I self-determine that step with the help of good people that help me, right, in that process. It's very powerful for people.
You've been kind of speaking to this intersection, but it sounds like self-determination and empowerment really go hand in hand. Can you speak to that kind of interaction a bit more?
Yes. So to empower, right, is to find your own internal capacity to be in the world, right, and to navigate through relationships and systems and experiences. In self-determination, you're determining something, right? There's something about an experience or who you are in the world that, it feels right for you or it doesn't feel right. And you're going to make a choice in that. Within that is personal power, to empower. I give myself that right. There's a way it's like power from the inside out. To be in this world, to be known, to be worthy. I'm bringing that to myself now. So if someone else took it away from me and someone else wants to prevent me from having it, I choose not to allow that to define me or to control me. I choose to take back my power, and I choose to have choices that are beneficial to me.
Right. Because when I hear the word empowered, I really think about kind of an external locus. So a lot of the time I'll look to, a motivational speech can be empowering. Caregivers can be empowering. Friends can be empowering and motivating. But that self-determination piece, as it intersects with empowerment, is looking within yourself to identify things that can bring you up versus looking outside.
Yes, and a lot of traumatic experiences take from your internal locus of control. So you are not given the right to, you might say no, but you don't get a chance to be heard in that. So then the goal of healing is that you can go back in and trust that voice, trust that sense of knowing, to give yourself, right, that right to self-determine. And sometimes in our work and or in society in general, there's a lot of other determining of what would work for you and what you should look like and what you have to be and all of that. But in healing, the most important thing is that you create spaces to offer in, but allow that person to self-determine. That allows them to develop that internal capacity to go into the world with a sense of knowing who they are and to be empowered in that.
When we're talking about this internal capacity, as it increases and as individuals start to practice this in their daily lives, how might that start to reestablish a sense of trust and security and safety within their lives and within their relationships with others?
Well, some of it is choosing, just basic things in life, like how I choose to get up and start my day and go into the world. The ways that I navigate just some of those basic, interactions with the world, and how I finish my day. And whether or not, if you could think of some simple stuff you see that people struggle with these days is losing hours. And this was in the research too, like sort of a adaptive behavior that maybe wasn't as healthy, and to recognize it wasn't and make changes, i.e. being on the phone for hours and just stimming out, because it's a way then of not being in who I am and finding healthier processes, because maybe it's so painful. But then how do I put my phone away and develop a practice to write in my journal, or find a really good friend that I can talk to for a little bit, or go outside and walk, take a walk and enjoy my capacity to be in this world, and to know I have a right to be in this world, to give myself a right to be healthier in how I respond to the world.
What about some of the potential barriers or obstacles that might get in the way of someone being able to practice in a self-determination framework?
Well, we live in a world of, a lot of potential oppressive, right, experiences, which means they're experiences that are not necessarily set up for the betterment of the whole. And that means some people get resources and other people don't. There could be financial constraints. There can be, geographic barriers, age barriers. There's all sorts of things going on, which means that the resources that are readily available are not always accessible for all. So those barriers can interfere with a person's, self-determination. And then you can internalize that and feel helpless, hopeless, like I can't get to where I need to be. I know that I have a right to get education, but I can't afford it. I feel like, there isn't anything that can help me enter into that. And so if people face barriers that may get internalized, and then they, it impacts their worth and their right to determine. So a lot of what we need to think about is, society, social responses is how do we reduce some of those barriers so that there's more access for people to be able to choose resources and choose, education and choose opportunities to feel good about the person that they are, to take back their right to be in this world and use their capacity in the best way possible.
And when some of those barriers are, say, systemic, and there isn't a active change in society towards breaking those down, how can those barriers and obstacles be addressed within the therapeutic room in a safe and honorable way?
I think number one is to hear the person, as they talk about those barriers, and then the complexity of what that brings to them as they're trying to seek, right, to self-determine their right to access something. Let's say they're trying to access something, and then to think together, right, with them if they're still wanting to somehow pursue and to determine something. What can you do to be an advocate in that experience with them? that can mean anything from writing a letter to, going through some kind of process to support them to make a phone call and to advocate for themselves, right, around something they want and they feel they need for themselves so they can grow. So you can really engage, participate in that actioning out some sort of, collaborative relationship where you support them in the process of, advocating for themselves or advocating with.
What about the intersection then with advocacy and self-determination? Because it sounds like those two are pretty interrelated as well.
Yeah, advocacy for self or co-advocating with them.
Either or.
Either or, yes. I think you enter into it where they need you to.
Yeah.
Remember, if they're going to self-determine that they want you to be a part of a phone call so they can advocate for their own needs, then you enter into it from there. If they would like to make that call themselves, but would like you to, maybe you can go role modeling some of what that conversation could be with them, then you enter in there. If they want none of that, but they're grateful they had the conversation, then that's where you also enter in and leave it. Right?
So just back to choice and collaboration.
Yeah. And hearing them, right, as they're self-determining. Because maybe they don't have the same communication skills or the language, they're struggling with that. So how do you sit and listen better? I can hear you're frustrated right now. I really want to understand how I could benefit you in this experience as you talk about. Let them, talk that through. Right. And don't, talk over or think, well, in my experience, that doesn't work. Let them have their experience, no matter what, right? Where they say, well, this is something I do want to do. I want to phone the Prime Minister and talk to them about this. Don't take that away from them. Okay, you know what? I can hear that matters to you. How can I help you, support you in that, whatever that is, in a way that will be healthy for you as you enter into that experience.
Right. And it's easy to listen to people, but it's one thing to feel heard in your experience. How can other therapists or practitioners or other professionals in this field to be trauma-informed and emphasize self-determination, how might they help individuals feel empowered and hear them in their journey to embrace their self-determination?
Well, I think one is to check in with your intentionality. Are you only there for yourself, or are you there for the person and the relationship you're creating so that they can walk away in a way that they're empowered to self-determine what they need in their healing? So intentionality becomes really important, because if we come in with the expert-only hat, we may miss that opportunity to really create a safe relationship, which lets them realize that they know what they need, right? Because we are not the knower of another's healing experience. They really are. We're just there to help them uncover it. And that's where that self-determination, they need a safe relationship, a relationship where you join in shared power versus power over, or you've just reenacted the dynamics of what traumatic impact is about.
And that can evoke some kind of negative experiences within that therapeutic process as well.
Yes, because then they may walk away disempowered and thinking they could only do this if they sat, in that whatever interaction is, versus that 1 hour or that interaction is just setting a foundation for them to find, right, to determine what they need and find that empowerment that they can take forward into the world. Because all traumatic experiences it's about power and control. So if you take out the need for control and you put back in the shared power, they walk away now more in control in relation to the power that they've developed to go back into the world and make choices that matter to their healing.
So it's almost like self-determination is an opposing force to that power and control dynamic that they've been experiencing.
Yes. And it means, really for any person that wants to be a part of someone else's healing and to be in, a space of co-sharing that power so they can self-determine, is really, you need to be able to know you're going to walk away with them being able to stand on their own feet and to take into the world whatever they've experienced about themselves, not about you. Because a lot of the expert over is It's going to be, oh, you get to take my knowledge and now you get to experience it, versus I have some knowledge, but the most important piece is what they experience about themselves in relation to that knowledge.
And feeling empowered by sharing it as well.
Yes.
Sharing it with another and having it be heard.
Yes, and sharing it and taking it into their experiences and redefining what they need, and maybe asking for something that they would have never asked for before, and or standing up to someone that they had never stood up to before. And that's how you advance, right, as a civilization, when people are empowered and they can self-determine their worth and what is needed so they can be well in the world.
Versus getting it from someone above them.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
That's great. Thank you so much, Dr. Miller, for sharing all of that.
You're
Thanks,
welcome.
everyone, for listening. Any final thoughts on the role of self-determination and its power, Dr. Miller?
It's a very important topic, and one, the more I've worked with people across the lifespan and in my own professional career and in my education, just understanding it, the more important I see it to be in helping people and helping ourselves, right? And that the whole of that is to allow people to reclaim their inherent worth and take that forward, right? And that's what allows all of us to live in a better way.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Dr. Miller.
Thank you so much.